Coming up on Chasing the Natty, it's the annual Summa Cum Laude CFF mock draft, and that means we're about to take on 10 other experts in a 14-round CFF mock draft. Joining me today is the creator of the draft and the gridiron scholar himself, John Laub. We'll be providing you picks, analysis, strategy talk live as the draft goes along, and I'm sure there'll be plenty of heartbreak and shenanigans mixed in along the way. We've got all that and more coming right after this.
Jinty go, breaks the tackle, he's 10, he's touchdown! Cook's gonna throw the deep ball, and Burton past the defense! Touchdown, Luther Burton! Milrow gonna run it again, got a lane, kicked in the turbo, Milrow! Goodbye, touchdown Bama!
This is Chasing the Natty, a college fantasy football podcast. All right, welcome in everyone. This is Jared Palmgren, host of the Chasing the Natty podcast. I hope you guys are having a wonderful ride to your work on this Monday morning. We are the college fantasy football podcast on the Campus to Canton podcast network. You can find us on all of your podcast feeds and on YouTube every Monday morning during the off season, 6 a.m. sharp. If you want to support the great work we're doing here, head on over to campuscanton.com and subscribe there to any of our stupendous tiers. We have content ranging on all sorts of college football games, whether it's college fantasy, Devy, Campus to Canton leagues, college IDP, college DFS. Really, if you play it, we've got content for you, whether that's tools, rankings, pretty much everything you need to succeed, including my brand new CFF Dynasty startup rankings now available for our NIL members over on the website. So go check that out if you have not already. If you want to get in touch for whatever reason, you can find me and the show on Twitter. I'm at CFF_Jared. The show is at Chasing the Natty, and the wonderful, handsome fella joining me today is the gridiron scholar himself, Mr. John Laub. John, welcome back to the show. Always a pleasure to have you on, man.
Well, first, thanks for having me on. Congratulations on the new Dynasty rankings on Campus to Canton. I've heard you talk about it, so that's awesome. And everyone, if you haven't been to Campus to Canton, you got to get over there. They literally have everything you want in order to play this great game. So I get over there quickly. Of course, we're on Fantrax, the only site in the industry that has college fantasy football. We are there. And Jared, I can't believe it's my 11th year doing this. The first 2 years, I actually did it on a Google spreadsheet. So that's how far we've come in my book when it talks about the mock drafts and how much fun it is now. And Fantrax is a great platform to draft on, and Campus Canton gives you all the information you need.
It really is kind of crazy how far we've come along. Did you ever think that there would be a published set of CFF Dynasty rankings? Go back 12 years, you'd be hard pressed to find a website that was consistently producing redraft rankings, let alone Dynasty rankings now.
Yeah, I would actually say it was hard enough. There was maybe 2 or 3 sites with rankings. I don't remember seeing a Dynasty 11 years ago. And I did probably about 10 years ago, I heard about Dynasty College, but to find the rankings were nearly impossible. So where we've come is just amazing. And I've always said, just before COVID, it was a speed bump. I thought CFF was really, really becoming big. And then the speed bump happened. But you know what? We're cruising again, Jared.
Oh, absolutely. Again, the fact we get new content creators every single year, other fantasy sites have started really kind of investing into college fantasy. I know, obviously, Fantasy Points has put a lot into their show and their content this year. Obviously, we at Campus Canton have been doing great. I can't wait. I know the guys over at Fantasy and Frames have started doing a little bit of college fantasy as well. So we're going to have some of those guys onto the show pretty soon to talk with them, get their points of view. It's really, really fantastic stuff. So, John, we're 5 minutes away from the Summa Cum Laude live CFF expert mock draft here. Why don't you tell everybody what this draft is, how long you've been doing it, and really what's the goal here?
I started this draft because, like we mentioned, getting dynasty rankings were nearly impossible. Jared, there were probably one or two sites doing mock drafts at the time. One is my good friend Mike Bainbridge, who's in the draft tonight. I think Mike and the CFF site have been doing the mock drafts the whole time. But other than that, I don't think there's anyone else who's around when I started 11 years ago. And I really just did it for fans because I had played NFL since 1989. And there was always been mock drafts in magazines and the internet. So you could go out and kind of find a value like in the sixth round, who might be available, right? That was my favorite thing to do 25 years ago. And I looked around and I just literally said, there's not enough information on college drafts. Like you do ADP now on Campus to Canton. That's incredible to me. Like that is one of the best tools that I've ever had for college. So the original intent was to provide readers and fans like myself an opportunity to find some baseline value. Who is a third quarterback I can get? Is a running back that I like? Is he as popular with other people? I mean, just getting rankings was hard. So I didn't know if a player like No Sean Marino, was he a third round pick, a fourth round pick in Georgia? You had no idea. It was really if you go get your guys back in the day, right? Like I remember a draft, I had Tim Tebow fall to the third round. I was like, no one knew the value of the dual threat quarterback back then. We just didn't understand it. So I started it just for that reason. And why, now it's on Fantrax and it corresponds with the end of my school year almost. I'm still in school for another 2 weeks, but AP exams are over. The heavy work is over. So it was like a nice transition for me into the end of the school year to the summer and to help people get some value in CFF and ultimately grow the game. That's why I think we're all doing it. What I love about everyone in tonight's draft is they all love college fantasy football. Please go follow everyone on X. It's in the article on Fantrax. You can see all of their X accounts. If you want to win your fantasy football league, if you follow all 12 members in tonight's draft, you're going to have a really good chance of beating the competition.
Oh, absolutely. Especially if none of the rest of your competition is following these guys. You have a huge leg up on everybody for sure. Again, we're about 2 minutes away here, John. I have the 104 pick. You have the 102 pick. So we're on the same side of the draft here. I guess I probably should go ahead and run through, because you mentioned all of the great people that we have a part of our draft tonight. I'll go ahead and run through them all real quick since I have a little bit of time. At 101 is JD Yankee. Used to be with Devi Watch, now kind of does some independent work on his own right now. Obviously, you, John, there at the 102. CFF List has the 103 pick. I wonder if it's just one of them picking tonight or if they're tag teaming it like they typically do. But they provide some great graphics over on Twitter, so make sure you go follow them. Obviously, me there at 104. I should probably have the mock draft page up so people can actually see it. But then you got Chris Battistel. I really hope I pronounced that right, Chris. I'm so sorry. Chris B is what I always refer to him as. He's there at the 105. He's one of the guys from Fantasy and Frames that I just mentioned there. Nino Brown joining us there at the 106. Nate Marquise there at 107. Chris K at 108. Two of the guys I have over with myself at Campus to Canton, part of our incredible team of CFF crew over there. Also, Nicholas Ian Allen, owner of CFP Winning Edge. He's there at the 109. CFF guys, aka Josh Chevalier. He is there at 110. Mike Bainbridge there at 112. And then Coach Bateman joining us for the 111. Again, I will have all of their Twitter handles down in the description below. Sorry, John, I still can't call it X. It never felt right.
I'm trying. It's still hard for me.
No, I totally understand that. So, John, we got about 1 minute here before the draft gets started here. You're there at the 102. Looking at just draft after draft after draft. Again, we have, with our ADP over at Campus again, we have over 40 drafts so far this offseason, if not a little bit more than that. And easily, Ashton GNT is by far the favorite at the 101. Every once in a while, you see an Ollie Gordon, maybe a Kadon Salters slip in there. But, John, you got the 102 there. The other guys are not listening to us, so go ahead and tell us, what are you looking at there at the 102?
I do believe it's kind of simple. It's one of the two running backs. It's Ashton Genty or Ollie Gordon. I thought a lot about a quarterback here because I do think there are three special quarterbacks, but I've decided to bypass it at the 102. I think you can make an argument starting at 103 to 106 to pull the trigger on one of the big three, but I'm not going to do it here. And even though I've started a draft at 101, I've done three previous. I did go a wide receiver. We'll talk about that later. But I didn't love how my team came together going wide receiver early. So I'm going to probably be a little bit consensus here and go up. There we go. We got the first one and I'm up. So I'm just going to go right here. I love Ollie Gordon. I'll take him at the 102. We saw JD Yankee take Ashton Genty. I think by the end of the year, 85% of the drafts will have those two at the top. What do you think, Jared?
I would say probably greater than 90%. Again, Kaden Salter, Ted McMillan kind of sneak in there every once in a while, but like it makes sense, right? Like why they're going there. So I'm at the 104, and I'll try to explain this as quickly as possible, but I'll be real. I've had this pick in several drafts. I hate it. I hate the 104 pick this year because it's the start of the next tier of guys. I'm probably going to go T-Mac here because he was kind of my consensus 103 before he got hurt. Now he is hurt, and that kind of gives me a little bit of pause compared to what I had before, but he should be good to go by the fall, and I convinced myself, well, if I have a healthy T-Mac, I should be good to go there, right? So I'll probably go with him. I could go Kaden Salter. Torrey Horton's another one that I maybe consider here, but I'll go ahead and put in T-Mac. Again, I just feel like ever since T-Mac got hurt, that 103 to 112, maybe a little bit further than that tier, they're all so similar. I hate being the one to have to pick the first guy off the board. It's like I'd much rather be later in the first round so that I can then get that double tap there at the end of the first round, second round, and really get two of those guys in that tier. Versus here, I have no clue who's going to make it back to me. We just saw Chris B take Torrey Horton there off the board. So John, while the rest of these guys kind of go through their picks, again, you go Ollie Gordon here, round one. I know, John, historically, you have been a very heavy running back early kind of guy. Is that still the same this year? Are you still going with that strategy, or what do you kind of like falling to you in the second round?
So here's what's interesting. I've given this a lot of thought. I'm going to let the board a little bit dictate. I do like the double tap on the edges. What I mean by that is to go back-to-back running backs or back-to-back wide receivers. Hey, there's sometimes you might go back-to-back quarterbacks. So I think I'm going to see what the value is at running back or wide receiver at that point in the draft. And I'm probably going to double tap. Whoops, Nino just took Jaden Daniels. Let me pause that if you don't mind talking while I pause for a second.
No,
all right?
No problem whatsoever. Again, like as I kind of mentioned before, I hate being early in the first round because again, I'm just hoping for value to fall to me rather than being able to fully take advantage of it there at the beginning of the second round. Now, I have a couple of guys that I have kind of warmed up to being more okay with in the back end of the second round. One guy in particular that his value's definitely changed over the last month or so has started falling to the second round, and I personally am very comfortable with taking him in the back of the second round compared to where he was going earlier this offseason. And so I'm kind of hoping maybe he falls back to me. Again, it gives me a little bit of a strong start at both wide receiver and running back because, again, I'm trying not... Well, actually, I can say because you're not going to pick before me. I'm going to hope that RJ Harvey comes back to me. I'm so used to my live shows where I have everybody listening to me and ready to snipe me at a moment's notice at any given point, man. Like, I don't know. Yeah, I'm gonna hope that RJ Harvey falls back to me. Again, there's other guys ahead of him that I like. Like if Darius Taylor, Mario Hampton, I mean, I don't expect these guys really to fall to me, but like if Devin Neal, DJ Giddens, Phil Maffa, even Taj Brooks, if they fall back to me, I'll probably take them ahead of Harvey. But realistically, given how much Harvey's fallen in value recently because of the Penny Boone transfer, I'm willing to take the shot there at the end of the second round and be pretty happy with that. How do you feel about that, John, with RJ Harvey and Penny Boone?
I like RJ Harvey. I think he might become a value because aren't people worried what UCF did, I still feel like he's going to be the guy in the backfield. And I do think we have to be very flexible in our draft analysis. When you're drafting with really smart people, and this is a smart group of CFF experts, the one thing I've been able to learn is you better be flexible and you better be able to pivot according to what the board gives you. So, hey, if Harvey's there and you like him, I would take my guy because I would not want to risk it coming around, right? Because there's 6 picks? Yeah, there's going to be 6 picks between 2 and 3. And that's a very likely position to lose your guy. However, what if Harvey goes right before? Then you got to be ready to pivot. But I love that idea. Now, I want to just say one thing. We haven't gone over the rules of the mock draft for everyone. There's no defense or kickers. So we just took that out. 2 quarterbacks, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, a tight end, a flex is in the rules. So you have to draft those positions. We're only doing 14 rounds, and it's all going to be on Fantrax. We're also doing 6 points for a passing touchdown. I'm channeling my inner Eric Froton. We also do this for CFF for the Kings Classic. So that's the rules that we're performing here. You guys can see how the board's being come together and how people are drafting.
Yeah, definitely for sure. Also, John, do you want to switch out Jaden Daniels there with Kaden Salter for Nino?
I got him in. He already went.
Okay, gotcha.
I have Kaden Salter in now.
Okay, cool.
I
did not refresh the page. There we go. All right. So a couple of interesting picks here on the back end. Let me kind of run through the picks real quick that have happened. Again, 106, Nino took Kaden Salter. Nate Marquise takes Byron Brown there at 1-7. Chris K takes Joey Hobart at 1-8. We'll get back to that in a second. At 1-9, Nick Allen takes Darius Taylor. Josh Chevalier takes Amari Hampton at the 1-10. Great value there, in my opinion. Hampton's a guy I typically see go off earlier. Yeah, Hampton's ADP is 7.5. Josh got him at the 1-10, so good job there, Josh. Coach Bateman took Phil Maffa at the 1-11. Mike Bainbridge took DJ Giddens at the 1-12. Bainbridge then followed that up with Jalen Rose at the 2-1. Coach Bateman comes back around to him, takes Malik Sherrod with a 2-2, and Josh Chevalier takes Jaden Ott at the 2-3 there. 2 picks that stand out to me here, John. Joey Hobart at 1-8. His ADP has him at wide receiver 8 and at 22.1. So you're talking about 10th pick in the second round. K takes him here at the 1-8. So, John, how do you feel about K taking him that early?
I'm a little surprised because I wonder if he could have got him in the second round. I see he double tapped at the wide receiver, which I like the strategy, but I wonder if he could have gone Hobart. According to your ADP, I think he could have gotten a little bit value. Now, it would have been a risk. So I will say when someone like Chris, who's very good, and he wants to go get his guy, then I guess I'm okay with that, right? Like that.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think he's a second round pick. I have it number 8. I think I have him at number 8 on my board. If you see me looking down, everyone, I do this by paper. So as soon as he went off, I looked at mine. I think, let me double check. Yeah, I have him at number 8. He just took Tez Johnson, who I actually have at number 7. So I'm a little bit higher on Tez Johnson. Not much. One spot doesn't matter too much.
No.
So it looks like Nino. Let me see what we might have to do here. What happens when Nino gets on the board here? I might have to help him for a little bit. So what we're doing, why don't you explain the last 2 picks? Yep. Let me pause. Go ahead, Jared.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and kind of catch up here. Yeah, Joey Hobart, I think the other important thing to kind of mention here is that Kay has done a ton of drafts with Josh Chevalier, he's done a lot of drafts with Mike Bainbridge, and I'm wondering if he knows that both Bainbridge and Josh are also high on Joey Hobart, and that's why he wasn't willing to wait till the 1-8. It is important to know when you're drafting, who are you drafting with for the most part? And so if you know that, you're with a guy, and by the way, a great way to do this is you can check your rostership in other leagues if you draft with other guys before. This is somebody did this to me once in a draft. I'm back on the board, and guess what? Chris B takes RJ Harvey. Anyway, I'll make my pick here, and I'll finish my point. Go to rostership, check out the leagues you've been in, and if you see a pattern of a guy taking a guy over and over again, I think you have to kind of play around with that. And if a guy, ADP says should go 2 rounds later, but you see the guy ahead of you takes that certain player all the time, like you said, John, got to pivot. I just took Dylan Gabriel with my 2-9 pick here, mostly because, again, John, as you reminded me, this is a 6-point passing touchdown league. Gabriel, to me, is the last of the 3 elite quarterbacks at the top there, guys that I'm willing to personally spend a first or second round pick on, and they're all the more valuable due to the fact that they have the passing touchdowns. And quite frankly, I'm kind of surprised he lasted this long, because of the 3 quarterbacks between Salter, Byron Brown, and Gabriel, those 3 elite guys, he probably benefits the most of those 3 guys from the 6-point passing rule there. So I'm very happy to get him there. I don't typically like taking quarterbacks this early on. Again, I've taken a couple in the first round here and there, but this might be the latest. It's been a while since I've taken a running back, so we'll see how it kind of falls here. John, you just took Damian Martinez at the 211. Talk to us about that pick.
I was looking at the wide receiver board, and if one of my top 8 fell down to me, I would have taken them, but they appeared to be all gone. So I decided the running back run concerned me. And I said, let me put a little bit of pressure on the other owners that I've taken back-to-back running backs. Now there's 4. Let me think. We have 4 in the first 2 rounds. 4 experts have taken back-to-back running backs. So that's a lot of running backs off the board. I think we already have maybe 12 off the board.
Easily.
So I wanted to double tap there. I like some receivers, not in love, but I'm hoping that a couple that I like later in the draft. So I might even go, this might sound crazy, but I'm thinking of going another running back here after JD, and JD just took Sean Atkins. And by the way, Jared, I loved your Dylan Gabriel in a 6-point passing touchdown. I think these 3 are by far the best, if that makes right. And I think getting Gabriel here, and I have a question after I make my pick for you, because I think this is a good question for the listeners. I just want to find my guy. All right. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm pushing him up the board too much, but I'm all in after spring practice reports. I'm going Jordan James of Oregon, baby.
All right.
It's 1 point for reception. And James is the pass catcher in Oregon now that Bucky Irvin has moved on. So, and I think he averaged 7.2 yards a run. Some of his advanced metrics were really good last year at Oregon. And I'm just going to suck up that Oregon offense as much as I can.
Real quick, John, is this draft PPR or no? I forgot what you said.
Yes, it is PPR.
All right, that makes this pick real easy. I'm going Evan Stewart. I've never seen Evan Stewart go this late, and I was debating between him and Taj Brooks, who's another guy I have not seen typically go this late. There's some good reason to be a little concerned about Taj Brooks. Well, there we go. Taj Brooks comes off the board immediately afterwards, and Nino Brown takes Jaden Daniels. Again,
let me pause. I apologize.
No, you are all good. You are all good. But yeah, I take Evan Stewart here. I like Tez Johnson quite a bit, and he goes off at 2.5. Evan Stewart at 3.4 is a great deal. Typically, I actually see it the other way around, where Evan Stewart kind of goes in the mid-second round, and Tez Johnson's kind of the value that falls into the 3rd round. But shoot, I'll take it. Evan Stewart playing that outside role there with Will Stein's offense. That, for those of you who need a friendly reminder, think of your Zachary Franklins, think of your DeCorian Clarks, whenever he was healthy at least. Think of your... Think of, obviously, Torrey Horton last year, who finished as a top 3 wide receiver in fantasy. I absolutely adore the fact that I was able to get Evan Stewart and stack him up with Gabriel there. Again, I'm not typically a guy that looks for stacks to do, but it just kind of made all the sense of the world for me to go and get it. All right, we got a couple... Oh, go ahead, John.
I was going to ask you about the pass-catching combo, and that I had noticed that Tez Johnson came off the board and Evan Stewart was sitting. I was going to ask you if you like to do. I love to do it. It is one of my strategies that I like. So, but I see you did it, and I love it. I think that's a great strategy, and I think you got value with both of those players. In what, top 3 offense? It should be right. It should be up there, top 5 worst, right?
Yeah, and I believe Chris K's already done some schedule analysis, and some people might be afraid of the fact that they're looking at a Big Ten schedule. And for the most part, Oregon seems to be pretty all right. They don't have any real tough road games for them to have to deal with that they wouldn't normally deal with in the Pac-12. Obviously, some better defenses, but for the most part, I think they should still be okay. I would be very happy with the start. The fact I got Evan Stewart and Tet McMillan as my 2 starting wide receivers here, feeling very, very good about that. Some more picks off the board here. Taj Brooks comes off the 3-5 to Chris B there. Nino Brown takes Bafele Ashlock, the wide receiver out of Hawaii. Nate Marquise with Mario Anderson, the transfer running back to Memphis there. Chris K with Makai Hughes out of Tulane. Emeka Egbuka, the wide receiver out of Ohio State, comes off to Nicholas Ian Allen there. Trey Wilson, Eugene Wilson, whatever you guys want to call him. Josh Chevalier takes him off at the 310. Gavin Sawchuk off at 311 there. I'm kind of surprised Nate Marquise didn't go for him, but I know Nate's a huge fan of Mario Anderson this year, so doesn't surprise me. Maybe he thought that Sawchuk would make it back to him there on the 4th round, because I believe Sawchuk, looking at my ADP here, 42.2 is his ADP, RB19. So that's middle of the 4th round. I could see how Nate kind of made that calculus to see maybe he can get his sooner on the way back there. So, and Mike Bainbridge just takes 2 quarterbacks back-to-back here. Jordan McLeod, Jackson Dart. So, John, this range of quarterbacks here, between like round 3, like starting with Jordan McLeod and kind of afterwards, after those top 3 guys, I personally am willing to kind of sit back at this point and let others kind of make the decisions for me. Because to me, guys like Jordan McLeod, guys like Jackson Dart, think of your Garrett Greens and everything like that. Like looking at it here, Jackson Arnold, Avery Johnson, Nico Iamaleava, they're all kind of in a similar tier to me. And always I find at least 1 or 2 of them falls as late as like the 6th, 7th round. And I'm willing to scoop up whoever kind of falls to that point, because people are still a little hesitant to take quarterbacks this early on. And so I'll take whoever kind of falls from that point. How do you kind of feel about the quarterbacks that go in this range?
I'm probably not going to take a quarterback in the first 5 rounds if I don't get one of the big 3. And that's Salter, Brown, and Gabriel. What I'm going to do, and you might take a quarterback here, and then if you double tap, that's fine. I'll tell you what my strategy is. I'd like to get the last one of my top 10 quarterbacks. So I'm crossing out. I had Jackson Dart. I have him at number 5, Jordan McLeod at number 6. So I will be watching the quarterbacks, and basically the rest of the league will tell me when to tap in. It might be the 6th round, might be the 7th round. I have my list of top 10. I'd like to get one in the top 10. Then after that, Jared, I'm pretty much, from picks, from quarterback 15 to 35, if I got 2 of them or 3 of them in a best ball, I'm okay with it, right? Like, I'll see where the value falls. And I do like McLeod and Dart, and I think it's a very interesting strategy. He might have 70 touchdowns combined with McLeod and Dart. That's just not the general direction that I'm building in. But I do like Mike Bainbridge doing that there. And I mentioned it. I love the double tap on the end. So I think Mike did a very nice strategy. He's got 2 of the top 6 or 5 quarterbacks, depending on how your rankings are. So that's impressive. Oh, I'm getting sniped all the time.
I don't think you realize how much my heart just sank on the last 3 picks there. Nick Allen with Will Pauling. Will Pauling's my boy. I have him as do I have him as top 5? Yeah, or top 6. I have him as a top 6 wide receiver in CFF. I've been grabbing him up in the 3rd and 4th round a ton this year. I've been feeling very, very good about that, but he goes off at 4-4 to Nick Allen there. I was kind of hoping my first running back there would be Kyle Monangai out of Rutgers. I don't typically take him. I haven't taken much of him this year, but again, given how this board's fallen, I'm like, all right, I need a safe, good volume pick there. And Chris K denies me that. And then I'm like, okay, well, I still got Alec Iomenor here as a top 13 wide receiver to me in my rankings. Maybe I can get him and have just a killer combo of 3 wide receivers there. Just did not happen to me. Good job, Nate, Chris, and Nick there. And you just go and take the other wide receiver or never mind. I just realized that I need to refresh the page. Never mind, it was Chris B that took him. Oh my god, and Cooley off the board too. Man, I'm just getting so screwed here. All right, gotta load up on running backs at this point. Otherwise, I'm gonna really start missing out on the position here. I'm gonna go with the guy. It hurts. It hurts because I know he has an injury history, but I and pretty much can guarantee you he's locked into 200 touches this year. Whenever he is healthy, he's basically a guaranteed 25 touches in a game. I'll take Jalen White, Georgia Southern running back. It's not my favorite top running back to have on my team, but I'm looking at a couple of guys here that I'm kind of hoping fall back to me. I actually have a running back who's at the top of my queue right now that I'm not going to take in this draft because he is specifically a guy that I do not take if I have not taken a running back in the first 3 rounds. So I will avoid a certain Big 12 running back here. But we'll see what you, the CFF list duo, and JD provide me here on the turn. John, it is your turn. What are you doing with the 4th round?
I noticed that only two of us, Coach Bateman and myself, went top 3 running backs. And then Coach Bateman took a wide receiver. There is one running back that I can't believe he's available, but I can't do it right here. I can't. I'm going to tell you when he gets taken. I can't believe he's still on the board. He's in my top 10. But I'm going to go wide receiver right here. I'm going to go the guy I love. I've been touting him. I'm going to take him here because I stick with the guys who I believe and I like the value. I'm going Kyren Lacy out of LSU. Okay. The reports have just been too much. I studied some tape of him. I know they had Brian Thomas and they had Malik Neighbors. There's some really impressive stuff on Kyren Lacy on film from last year. Oh, I'm up again. Ooh, my other wide receiver. I think he's my top guy I want. Let me double check here. Yes. I'm going to go into Mississippi offense. Oh, 2 SEC guys here. I'm going to go Trey Harris of Mississippi. I think Mississippi might score a real lot of points this year. They're kind of loaded on the offense. So I'll take Trey Harris. So I get my 2 wide receivers. Mm-hmm. I feel pretty good with the value that I should get over 100 targets minimum for each of those 2. And however happens after I get the targets, we'll see what happens. And I like that. John Junkins, I wanted to see his value. He went a little early. What do you think? I think he went early. Do you think he went a little early in the 4th round here, Jared?
I do think he went a little early here. I'm trying to find where he is on our ADP right now. I'm actually up real quick, so I'll go ahead and take my first guy here. Ooh. I have 3 running backs I'm looking at. They're all similar in value in terms of ADP, and guess what? Their average value is about a round later, but I've dug myself into a hole here, so I have to take another running back. And I'm going to take a guy I haven't been able to take a couple chances on this year and just see if any of the other 2 guys fall to me. I'm going to take Ontario Brown. Again, I need volume at this point. I need guys that are going to get me 200-plus touches, pretty much guaranteed on their teams. Ontario Brown, easily the best player for Northern Illinois. He's going to get as many opportunities as they give him as long as he doesn't get hurt. So I'll go ahead and take him. Regarding Quinshon Judkins again, RB22, his ADP is actually right about here. 48.1. The interesting thing to me is still the difference between him and Travion Henderson's value, right? Like Travion Henderson, they convinced to come back. They bring in Quinshon Judkins. They're going to be quite the duo here. I'm not so sure that, again, we've seen obviously Chip Kelly have 2 incredible running backs in the past, but I think what people always typically forget is that usually comes when the passing game for whatever team is under Chip Kelly isn't doing as well. And obviously, as we all know, Ohio State, where Chip Kelly is now, is loaded at wide receivers. Now, the big question is quarterback. Can they get a passing game going with the likes of Will Howard or Devin Brown, whoever ends up winning that job? Again, I favor Will Howard, but even regardless, both of them are more limited in the passing game than we've seen with recent Ohio State quarterbacks, for sure. So, to me, if you believe that passing game is going to falter because of those quarterbacks, then yeah, I don't blame you for going after either of Judkins or Henderson. But if you're taking Ohio State running backs early, I better not be seeing you take any wide receivers for Ohio State in any of your drafts because, quite frankly, there's too many mouths to feed at that point. Like, you're looking at you're either thinking that either both Judkins and Henderson are going to get enough volume to where they're both going to be relevant. Otherwise, you're looking at a split backfield, in which case you're taking all of them way too early at that point. But I don't know. I really have just avoided Ohio State players for the most part this year. I like Carnell Tate's value early, kind of backed off on that a little bit once the Chip Kelly hire came in with his kind of so-so history with wide receivers. You got Emeka Buka there. I can believe that one wide receiver will be relevant. I'm not sure about two.
He's off the board.
Yeah,
he's off the board.
Baxter was the running back I was considering. And here's the thing, John. I cannot in good conscience take him as one of my first two running backs. Because as much as I believe in him, I don't know that he's going to be the running back one for Texas. Now, 5'8", great value. I probably should have pulled the trigger there a little bit more. But usually I love grabbing him, as Kay did here, as my third running back, man. You get two guys with high volume, and then, man, you swing for a grand slam there with C.J. Baxter as your third guy. Kay might end up having the best draft so far, in my opinion, I didn't like the Hober pick going that early, but, man, with what he's done after that point, I'm loving Kay's draft so far.
Oh, I love the draft because I was staring at Cedric Baxter, and if I knew he was going to last to 5'8", I would have taken a wide receiver in 3. And this is why I love these mock drafts. I mean, I do like to learn. Maybe I don't take 3 consecutive running backs. I think it's something I'm going to practice more and look at in some best ball drafts and strategy building as I go forward here. But if I knew Baxter, I would have loved to take him Baxter in round 4 or round 5. That value right now, and I think you said it, there is risk here because we're not 100% sure that he's the starter. Yet, if I was a betting man, I think there's a 60% chance that he wins the backfield duties at Texas. And if you get Sharks running back, we've all been there, right? Oh, yeah. That is just going to be a gold mine. So I love Mekhi Hughes. I love Kyle Mangangai. Oh, my God, with Baxter, that is very nice.
All right, we got our first quote-unquote tight end off the board there with Dalvin Smith at 6'1" there to Mike Bainbridge. Tight ends typically I see start coming off the board around 7th, 8th round. Bainbridge going a little bit earlier here. I mean, it makes sense, right? If you believe it. If you think Dalvin Smith's clearly your number one guy, then like reach up for another around there. I think it's more than okay. And again, like he knows for a fact that like if Dalvin Smith typically goes off in the 7th round, there's no way he's making it back to him at 7-12. I don't blame Bainbridge for the pick there whatsoever. A couple more quarterbacks off the board here at 6'2", Avery Johnson, 6'3", Nico Iamaleava. We got quite a few picks here that we've kind of gone through that I haven't really read out to everyone. Again, Haynes King, some quarterbacks off the board at 4'10". We had Garrett Green at 5'1", Haynes King, and then I just mentioned Avery Johnson, Nico Iamaleava. Some wide receivers that came off the board, Brendan Presley at 4'8". John, you took Lacey and Harris there. Rock Taylor comes off at 5'6", the wide receiver from Memphis. Deion Burks, a wide receiver at Oklahoma, who's seen a pretty big jump up in value recently, coming off at 5'7". We also see Jeremy Bernard and Derwin Burgess come off at 5'12". And, oh my goodness, the draft's moving so quickly. I can't keep up anymore. Come off.
I got it.
Yeah, there we go. Whew, pause it. Whew, and it's going so fast. Everybody's making their picks so quickly. So
absolutely, it's going by so quick now.
I'll go some running backs here. 5'3", Jonah Coleman. I took Ontario Brown. Trevor Etienne out of Georgia comes off. We talked about C.J. Baxter. Donovan Edwards at 5'9". Abu Sama at Iowa State. L.J. Martin out of BYU comes off at 5'10". That's certainly the earliest I've seen him come off the board. What do you think about L.J. Martin, John?
Well, I was going to mention it. I was getting L.J. Martin late, like round 18, and I like him this year as a late round. I think I have him in that 30 to 40 range at running back. I'd even mark him off my list because he wasn't someone I was thinking. So either Coach Bateman likes him a lot more than what ADP, right? I would assume he's pretty low. So I do like him, and I love him as like a 5th running back in best ball. I thought, because we know the BYU running back can do some really nice things for you, right? I just don't know if I would have taken him in the 5th round myself.
No,
But I like this quarterbacks. Woo.
I would say I certainly would not have gone that early. Again, LJ Martin RB or ADP here, RB 74, so 220.3 is his ADP. So you're talking about, I'd say probably like pretty much you nailed it, John. Right about the 18th round there. I think this is probably way too early. I'm just not a big fan of BYU this year in general. They've been kind of a mess the last couple of years. Maybe they get it turned around. But I have to believe it to see it. If you own him in Dynasty and you picked him up last year, obviously, like, don't drop him or anything like that. But definitely a little early here. At 6'5", Kyron Jones comes off the board. Jalen Milroe comes off at 6'6". Those are both great picks there in the 6th round, especially with the extra juice we're giving quarterbacks here. Chris B is about to time out. Come on, buddy, make your pick. And he gets in Shedeur Sanders.
Oh!
All right. I love the fact that we went on a quarterback run there because it pushed some of the running backs that I was looking at down around here. So I'm going to go ahead and grab a guy that I was looking at in the 5th round. I'm happy to get here in the 6th round. I'll give you TJ Harden, running back out of UCLA. Ooh. I know that UCLA might be a bit of a mess this year, but quite frankly, I think TJ Harden might be the one thing that they can rely on for the most part in that running game. Again, they're going to the Big 12 where running back, or excuse me, not the Big 12. They're going to the Big 10 where RBs tend to flourish a little bit more, where games have to be slowed down a little bit compared to the Pac-12. Harden showed some real nice flashes last year. He's got that backfield pretty much all to himself. Yeah, I don't care about John Emery Jr. He hasn't done anything so far. He's not going to do anything now at UCLA. Totally cool with it. And as my 3rd running back, honestly, I'll take it. I feel like I'm recovering at the position pretty well here. I'm thinking I might go for a 4th running back here, depending on what you, JD, and the CFF list team provide me here. John, you take Oronde Gadsden out of Syracuse, man.
I don't like to get stuck with nothing at the tight end, and I do believe there are 2 or 3 tight ends who I feel comfortable with, like 75 targets, right? I want to get into that target floor. The reports look like Gadsden's healthy. And I mean, what does Froton always call him? Tight end in training or in
tight end in title only.
In title only,
Tito's.
Tito. So I do think Gadsden's a little bit of a Tito. He's more of a big inside receiver / tight end. As long as we get good training camp reports, which right now we're getting pretty positive reports, I think Gadsden's going to be very, very good. So I'll take him here because I didn't want to get stuck at the position. Now, Seth Enikin. He was on my list. Let's see now. So we got Shedeur Sanders. I haven't been taken off. You know what I'm going to do? I have 1 quarterback in the top 10 remaining who I'm really comfortable with. So I'm going to take him right now. I'm going to go KJ Jefferson of UCF.
Very good pick.
I think with the rushing upside, I think he might get a lot of those quick, short touchdowns. I'll take KJ Jefferson here. And I feel like I have my stud at the quarterback position.
All right, I thought about taking a running back here, but again, quarterback's starting to dry up a little bit, in my opinion. And I'm going to go ahead and just double up on my 2 stud quarterbacks here in great systems. And once again, it paid for me to wait a little bit on grabbing my 2nd guy here because, man, I get Jackson Arnold here in the 7th round. Ooh. I get the guy that Dylan Gabriel is leaving for at Oklahoma. I get the Seth Littrell quarterback and the Will Stein quarterback here as my 2 guys in a 6-point passing touchdown league. Oh, baby, I'm loving that. I am loving that so much like you would not believe. Again, I'm a little still queasy at running back. I got 2 guys in my queue right now. Actually, I'll go ahead and say who they are. Actually, now that we're kind of a little bit later, I'm feeling a little bit better about some of the other guys here that I can kind of boost up my running back room with. But again, I got White, got Brown, got Harden. Jaheim White is the other running back I'm looking at right now. He was the guy I was potentially going to take here in the 7th round as like once again, similar to Baxter, where if he pays off, he's a home run hit. Like he was averaging almost 8 yards per carry for West Virginia last year. Just an explosive guy. Hoping that he can get that true workload. And as I say that, Chris B, takes him off the board.
Oh.
Chris B's like got a mic in here somewhere because he keeps taking my guys like after I'm talking about him. And then the other guy that I'm looking at is somebody who's kind of flown under the radar a little bit, but was a top 30 back for CFF last year, so a pretty solid floor. And I would expect him to do it again this year, especially year 2 under oh my gosh, why am I blanking on Kenny Dillingham there at Arizona State? But Karis Gatabo, I like his value here in the like 8th, 9th round that he's been typically going. So I'm kind of hoping his value sticks there a little bit. John, again, I've already told you who I'm kind of aiming for on the way back here, but who are some guys that you're kind of hoping for? Or how are you evaluating your team at this point, and how does that make you decide what positions you're going to target next?
So I feel like I have my starting lineup. I do need another wide receiver. So right now, when I was looking down, I'm old school. I got my list here. I'm looking at my wide receivers. I'm putting some wide receivers in the queue. I'm probably going to go wide receiver next because I'd like to get my third wide receiver for my lineup. But I feel pretty good with Gadsden because I probably have a little bit of advantage at the tight end position against opponents. I love Malachi Fields. We didn't get to really talk about him, the Virginia wide receiver that went to CFF Lifts. He was on my queue. I think that's a really nice pick. Maybe a little earlier than I'm used to seeing, but I think that's a very good pick. And it was between Jefferson and Jackson Arnold for me. So based on what I'm looking at, I love that pick, by the way. I think that's great upside. I'm probably going to take a wide receiver. There's a couple. Stephen McBride I was just looking at. Now, did I miss? Did Derwin Burgess go off the board? Am I missing?
Yes, sir. He went off at 6'4".
Okay, so I missed him. And then I got guys like Jaden Higgins. I have Squirrel White. I have Kobe Hudson. I have Chris Brazel. I think that's it. Elijah Surratt, Indiana. So there's a couple guys I like that I could take an advantage of, hopefully, if one falls back to me. So, there's another tight end to Chris K. So he got his lineup, too, with one of the tight ends. So I'm looking at that position to see who falls to me.
No, I can totally see that. Again, I'll be real with you. I have Stephen McBride in my queue. He's going later in this draft than I typically would go. I haven't gotten a ton of shares of him this year, and again, he's definitely somebody that if my running backs get hit here between Scatabo, I'm also looking at Ches Malusi, Chip Trayanum there at Kentucky. If all those guys go, I'm sorry, John, I'll be real with you. Oh, never mind. There he goes.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. He's off the board regardless. So good pick there by Nick Allen. Again, I'm probably going to shore up my running back room here a little bit. I am similar to you, John, that I also need my third wide receiver. But honestly, like among the guys that are left, unless there's like a huge run of them here, I'll probably, even with your picks there in between, considering the guys you were talking about, I'll probably be able to get a third guy here that I'll feel pretty good about.
Ooh. So look at this tight end run. I took Gadsden, then Brent Keithy, Harold Fannin, who I love, went to CFF guys. And I've not seen Jolly, my former UConn player. Anyone who's watching probably knows I love UConn. Jolly, who's now at North Carolina State. Coach Bateman took him at the end of round 7. That's pretty impressive. I don't even have Jolly that high, but I do think
what is that? What is that, tight end 5, I think?
Yeah, tight end 5.
Joey usually goes tight end 11, and you're talking about maybe the 12th, 13th round. So again, I mean, Bateman, again, for better or for worse, Bateman's punting ADP here, man. Like he is like getting his guys. And I mean, that could be a really good thing. Again, Jordan Moore is a guy that I have put into my ranking. Is another guy that Coach Bateman took here. He's been kind of rising up my ADP, or not my ADP, my rankings a little bit. Because again, like who else is there at Duke for the most part? I kind of like the running back more, Jacquez Moore over there. But I mean, a bad team that's going to be forced to score or forced to pass a ton. You got Malik Murphy, who's not the worst arm in the world. I think Moore is probably being undervalued, and Bateman's just saying, hey, like you guys are undervaluing him. I'm going to take him this early. So
I will say what I love about, I love so much about CFF but one things I love when you draft, you do see more of take your guys than we do in the NFL. Mm-hmm. We don't have as much of that in college or in the NFL as we do in college. And I love that about our game. So I give Coach Bateman, hey, those are the players that he likes. Goes get them. I have Jolly at 12, but doesn't mean that's just how I rank them based on what I've seen in the past, and what I project him to be. But I like that. So Preston Stone just went to Nino Brown. That's a good pick.
Yeah, I think that is a good pick.
He's got his 2 quarterbacks now.
I'm gonna break your heart, John. I got Jolie.
Oh
down,
no,
I got Jolie down at tight end 21. And
that low? Okay, I have him at 12.
No hard feelings here. Like my tight end rankings are like the one position that this year I just felt like I had to do projections of some kind because, like you said, after those first couple of guys, it really does just become such a crapshoot. And just the way it kind of broke down, I'm currently projecting Jolie, let's see, around 80 points here based off 60 targets, 40 catches, 420 yards, 3 touchdowns. I think that's pretty much what you can expect for the most part of a tight end. Heck yes, let's give me Cameron Scatabo. I'm feeling much better about my running back situation here with him as my 4th running back here. And now I'm just going to sit here and pray, John, that you don't take any of my wide receivers that I'm looking at here.
Well, I wanted Singleton, so that hurts a little bit. I'm getting sniped a lot tonight. Every time I turn around, I see one of the guys I have in my queue. But
Chris B especially has just been so brutal for us.
So I like Scatterbo too, and he seems to have been. Am I missing something? Like reading the tea leaves, looking around. It seems like he's a forgotten running back. Am I like? Don't you feel like there's value in him that people just aren't talking about?
Of course, that's why I took him here at 8-9. Again, I've been noticing more and more he has fallen. His ADP's RB 36. 91.9, so you're looking at, again, like 7th, 8th round here. Again, this is even late for where he's typically been going. Like, you can see how excited I was to get him. And I think part of it was that he was one of those guys we weren't fully sure at the start of the season whether or not he was coming back or not. And I still think his value hasn't fully recovered from that initial hesitation because he's shot up compared to where he was going even earlier this offseason. I still think he's a guy that's worth taking in like the 5-6 round range, so I'm very excited to get him here. Woo! I don't have to ask you twice which Louisville wide receiver you're rooting for here, John. You took Jaden Higgins at 8-11, but you took Chris Bell at 9-2. John, we've been talking about like guys like LJ Martin going early you can get late, but man, you said punt the ADP here, man. I'm getting Chris Bell. What's got you so sure about Chris Bell over the likes of like Colin Lacey or even Ja'Cory Brooks?
I just watched the spring game. I've been reading reports. I'm a sizist when it comes to football. Just maybe it's the old man in me. But when I see a young man who has that much potential last year, and I think he was the 3rd or 4th receiver in the rotation, he still had 44 targets, 407 yards, 2 touchdowns. And didn't he have like 2 or 3 touchdowns in the spring game? Two. And I was really impressed with them. And I kept looking at the research. I'm like, man, the coach. And I've heard you say this, Jared, in the past, that when the coaches start talking up a player, your antenna should go off.
Mm-hmm.
And I just decided, I'm going to make a point here. Someone I'm interested in. This is a mock draft for readers and for people to get. I'm all in. I'm willing to take the risk as a 4th wide receiver. We know if he gets the targets, he's going to have a good season at Louisville. So I'm willing to take him here. I do like him. I think he's the best one. This is early in the process, but looking at the spring practice and the film, I think he's the best one at Louisville.
Alrighty, I'll go ahead and talk about my pick here at 9-4. I went with Rashad Owens, the wide receiver there out of Oklahoma State. Just a phenomenal end to the season here. I'll see if I can pull up his stats here real quick. We had in his last couple of games 14 targets against Oklahoma, 9 targets against UCF, 6 targets versus Houston, 6 versus BYU, and then just a phenomenal ending here, 5 targets against Texas, but 2 touchdowns there. And then against Texas A&M, they did nothing but feed Brendan Presley and Rashad Owens in that game where he got 14 targets in that game. We know the outside wide receiver for Mike Gundy has been just an absolute gold mine over the years. You're talking about guys like Tylan Wallace, guys like that, right? We've been shooting for it in dynasty drafts for years, man. And Rashad Owens looked like he kind of stepped up to be to the plate last year and is becoming that guy at least for the next year here. I know some people are a little bit worried about Dejon Stribling, who's coming back from injury. Apparently, he's a guy the staff likes. But I think Rashad Owens did enough at the end of last year to kind of solidify the fact that he's going to be one of the top guys for this Oklahoma State passing game. And John, you talked about it before, or really before we started the show. They got a veteran quarterback. Again, as much as that buys you with Alan Bowman. But regardless, it is a veteran quarterback who's familiar with these guys, right? They got Ollie Gordon, who can spell the passing game at literally any time that it's not working, kind of open things up as teams try to stack the box against him. I think Owens is going to be fine. He's my third wide receiver off the board here. If I get out of this draft with Ted McMillan, Evan Stewart being the, not Torrey Horton, the, oh my God, not Ted Johnson. Oh my God, why am I blanking on the Oregon wide receiver from last year? Troy Franklin, being the Troy Franklin replacement, and I get the Mike Gundy wide receiver 1 as my top 3 wide receivers. I'm feeling pretty good. I'm probably going to take another wide receiver as it comes back to me here. A couple of guys that I like that are still on the board here, but we're pretty quickly getting into my guy territory, at least with the wide receivers. Running backs, there's still a little bit of chalk in my opinion on the board, and I do have to take a tight end at one point, so I'm probably going to go ahead and load up my queue with my next 3 top guys here, and I'll probably pick whichever one's last out of those 3. So that's enough talking from me, John. What are you kind of seeing on the board? What do you have in response to that?
Well, I think by now we're looking at a running back position where it is clearly now take your guy. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. I'm not as high on Chad Malusi as others. I know he might look like, but hasn't he been given the job before and really not come through? 21-20, he had 815 yards rushing. I'm just not a big Chad Malusi guy. Matt Corral, I loved him last year at Georgia State. Can he make the jump up to Missouri in the SEC? We'll see. But obviously Nick Allen likes him a lot. Corey Kiner, I feel the same way. He's been given opportunities before. I do like the schedule this year. So I see a lot of guys. I have some running backs on my board that I'm putting in the queue right now. But I think it's get your running guy. And I love this pick right now by CFF Guys, and everyone knows me. Nate Singleton in the 10th round for the upside. I really like that. I'll also want to say, I think there's a lot of value at quarterback still. I think I'm going to wait a little bit at the quarterback because I was just looking quickly at my list. Can I say this? How far is Haynes King now falling? He seems...
He got hit with everybody realizing at the same time that Georgia Tech has a brutal schedule this year.
So all of a sudden, look at I was taking him in round 5 or 6, and now he's still available on the board. And I'll be honest, I'm not going to take him right here. I might take him with my last
no, he was taken.
He was
5-1. 5-1 he was taken by JD.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
No, you're good. Things slip through the cracks, but again, your point is correct. Like, he used to be a guy that was going in like the 2nd, 3rd round. Now he's falling into the 5, 6 round range because people looked at that schedule and said, I don't know if I really want any part of that. So I want to push back a little bit on your Chez Malusi dump in there, John, because you talked about like he hasn't done much when given the opportunities before. To end 2022, he was given 21 carries against Nebraska, got 98 yards, didn't get any touchdowns, but still 98 yards, pretty solid. Against Minnesota, again with a pretty good rushing defense, 19 carries, 75 yards. So again, not anything to blow your top up, but solid enough. It's not like he did nothing. Against Oklahoma State, 16 carries, 77 yards, a touchdown. And then to start last year, I can't get it to, there we go. To start last year, before he got hurt, 13 carries against Buffalo, 157 yards, 2 touchdowns. 12 carries against Washington State, 50 yards, touchdown. Against Georgia Southern, 15 carries, 61 yards, touchdown. And then Purdue, 11 carries, 39 yards, and then he got hurt. Right? He's not going to blow the top off. I don't think he's Braylon Allen or anything like that, but like he did pretty solid when given the opportunity. And I think, it's his final year. They're going to try to run him into the ground for the most part. They did bring in Tyree Walker and oh my gosh, the other guy Tyree Walker's from Oklahoma. They also brought in the guy from Minnesota. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. But they did bring in some guys to help him out. But for the most part, I still think it's going to be his job this year. All right, I'm going to go ahead and take I'm going to go and take my fourth wide receiver here. I'm going to take Xavier Henderson. This is a guy that I think has been, probably one of my highest rostered wide receivers have been taken because I have a magic number in my head whenever I go into these drafts. 100 targets for wide receivers. Xavier Henderson got 98 targets last year. And he gets a quarterback upgrade this year. You get year 2 of Scott Satterfield there at Cincinnati. I think that Cincinnati's kind of overall an underrated offense for CFF this upcoming year. And I really do think that Henderson could easily break that 100 target threshold this year. And I'll take that as my fourth wide receiver here. I'm trying to decide what to do with my next pick. Do I go my guy at wide receiver? I got a lot of my guys here in a row. Or, actually, you know what? I'm going to do something that's going to tick off. I'm going to tick off Nate. I'm going to tick off Josh Chevalier here. This is going to be hilarious. I'm going to see if they start blowing things up in the chat here. Again, who cares? It's a mock, but like I would probably wait a little bit more on this guy, but this is going to be absolutely hilarious. All right, John, before we get to whatever I'm about to do, you took Caden Fagan. He's a guy that I personally, it's hard for me to figure out. It's like I like him, but man, that itch in the back of my brain of Josh McCray's still there. And they got other guys that they're willing, and Brett Bielema is not afraid of a committee approach in the past. What's kind of making you not feel so bad about Caden Fagan?
He fits he's 250. If my memory serves, he's 250 pounds, right? 5'1". And Bielema would like to pound the football as often as possible, especially he wants to slow down games. My memory serves me, I believe they're in the bottom 20 plays per game, Illinois. And when you're taking a sophomore running back, he was a freshman last year, and you're just going to have the opportunity to pound him between the tackles, I think that's a Bielema offense. And I know touchdowns are fickle, but if he's the guy who gets the touchdowns,
You're by the way, John.
Remember Chase Brown? Luckily I have my guy queued up.
Perfect.
Remember Chase Brown when all those touchdowns that he got for Illinois for Bielema's system? I think Kate Fagan could be the touchdown guy, so I like him there. And I took my quarterback that I like. I like it. I like to pair up my wide receiver. I got Kyren Lacy in the 4th round. I'll take Garrett Newsmeyer here. I was impressed with them in the spring. I know one touchdown was just total blown coverage, so let's not get too excited. That was one of the, someone in the secondary really blew that long touchdown. But the reports are positive. I liked him coming out of high school. Brian Kelly's going to throw the football at LSU. So I'll take Garrett Newsmeyer in round 11 and hope things work out.
I think what else people forget is that we've seen plenty of Nussmeier, right? Like,
yes.
Isn't like, one of the scenarios where we're like projecting next man up. Like, we've seen Nussmeier do well against Georgia's defense in 2022. We saw him do well against Purdue when he was kind of splitting reps with Jaden Daniels there for a minute. We saw him do well against Wisconsin this past year. Granted, it took him a minute to get going, but for the most part, he's great. And in a 6-point passing touchdown league here,
yes,
that's a fantastic pick there, John. I took Denzel Boston, the wide receiver out of Washington. A lot of us kind of hopped on Jeremiah Hunter early on because we're like, oh, God, who else does Washington have? Well, it turns out they got Denzel Boston, who's a pretty kick-ass wide receiver in his own right. And if you go and watch the spring game, man, all Will Rogers wanted to do was find Denzel Boston. This is not necessarily just the case of spring game warrior, right? We've had plenty of those in the past, and man, do they burn us quite a bit. Boston had that steady drumbeat that I look for every single spring of like, all right, who's constantly getting mentioned about how well they're doing every single practice or every chance that the coaches or the beat writers can talk about a player, they're talking about him. That was Denzel Boston this spring. And man, did he show up in the spring game, kind of confirmed what we're looking for. He's my 5th wide receiver here. I might have gotten a guy that potentially is a top 24 wide receiver here as my wide receiver 5. I'm loving this, and I got other guys on the board here that I'm loving some of the wide receivers that are falling here. But granted, some of these guys are my guys, so we'll definitely see. My apologies to everybody, by the way. I have not been able to keep up with all the picks that are coming off the board. I do recommend you go and check out the video version of this show. That way, if you're wondering like where certain guys are coming off the board, you can just look it up yourself there and you'll be able to find most of those guys. John, it sounds like
And
you
go
want it.
to the Fantrax article. The
True.
whole draft will be there. You can check out the draft at Fantrax.
Very, very true. I thank you for bringing that up as well. All right.
Ooh, I like that. Amari
Yeah.
Thomas.
Martin
He
Thomas,
seems
he goes later, but like again, we know that UAB is going to pass quite a bit. He was the leading receiver in targets for UAB last year already. Now, granted, I don't like the fact that his ADOT was right around 5 yards, so there wasn't really a lot of downfield passing with him, so that kind of limits his ceiling a little bit, but maybe that's something they're working on this offseason here. I think he'll lead the targets again for UAB this year. We know they're going to pass quite a ton. I don't necessarily hate it there. Once again, it's Bateman. He said, I don't care that Amari Thomas goes off 10 rounds later. He's my guy. Oh, John, you look upset by what Bainbridge just did there, tapping Dylan Sampson and
by
Caleb
two
Jackson.
guys.
Oh, and Bateman takes Christian McCray. Now I'm hurt.
Oh my! I love Dylan Sampson. I was debating between Dylan Sampson and Fagan, and I just thought maybe I can get Dylan Sampson, so I took him and Jackson. Now, I don't know if I would have taken a third LSU running back or a third LSU player, but man, I think the value of Jackson right there that's a nice late round double tap, like two really nice young running backs and potentially explosive offenses. I like that a lot. So I just was like, oh, there goes my cue. So now I gotta look around. But I did like those two picks very much right there. And Holden Willis. We didn't talk about that. Holden Willis in the 11th round by Chris. That's not bad. He's a tight end in title only. But man, he might be their best receiver / tight end at Middle Tennessee. That's a really nice pick in round 11, pick 5.
Got a couple of good values at quarterback coming off the board here with Noah Fafita, Brady Cook, especially in 6th round passing touchdown. Well done there by Chris K and Nicholas Ian Allen there. I'm having to wrap my head around the fact that we only have 3 picks left. I'm so used to these being like 30 round drafts and everything. So I'm like trying to plan out like my next 5 picks here. I'm like, oh yeah, this guy go. God, there's so many good picks still on the board. I guess that's what happens when I'm used to 30 rounds and everybody becomes a good pick after like round 15 or so. But I got to really plan out who I'm going to take here. I still got to take a tight end. I've not taken a tight end at this point. I'm trying to think, I'm going to go, I think I will just go ahead and go with the guy that I think, I'll name both of the tight ends that I'm going to look at here. I'm sure the other one will go up, but I'm going to go ahead and take the guy that I know for a fact I want to talk about as soon as it gets to my pick here.
Now, I would assume, I think I know the tight end you might like it. Oh, never mind. He's off the board.
No, I'm going to go, I talk a lot of crap about South Carolina, man. I'm going to go Nick Harbor. I'm going to go Nick Harbor here as my tight end. I am really coming around to this. Again, Nick Harbor is an absolute monster athletically. And South Carolina, man, they lost so much. They lose, obviously, Xavier Legette, who was a first-round pick, and they lose their wide receiver 2, and Brown. It leaves a ton of production left over. Now, granted, they brought in a metric ton of wide receivers, but at the same time, man, like, when you got Nick Harbor here, who by a lot of people's estimation is still, regardless of who they brought in, still their best wide receiver. And he gets that tight end eligibility. He plays on the outside where we saw Xavier Legette do well this past year. We saw Antwain Wells do well the year before that. I mean, for a tight end, I'm thinking I'm going to get a bit more aggressive with Nick Harbor moving forward. I think that I've been sleeping on him a little bit too long, and the absolute monster ceiling that he could have, because like I told you, John, I project tight ends for my rankings, because again, otherwise I would lose my mind trying to decide between all of them. Harbor, I currently have projected for 65 targets. We saw Legette get 98 last year. If I give Legette or Harbor here where is he at? If I give him just 90 targets compared to last year with his 65% completion or reception percentage, he suddenly goes up to 885 yards, 7 touchdowns, easily outperforming guys like Holden Willis or Rondé Gadsden, Dalvin Smith, who I had projected for. But that's his ceiling, right? So right now I haven't projected it just like a measly 65 targets, thinking that they maybe spread the ball around a little bit. But man, Nick Harbor, the ceiling's incredible there. If you want to go for just that swing tight end, Harbor's probably the guy. Maybe I double tap tight end here. It might be something that I do if I wait this long in a draft because, quite frankly, I'm looking at another guy here that he's the last of my tight ends I'm looking at here that I have projected for over 100 fantasy points in half PPR formats. So we'll see. We'll see what if I can get him here. I think that it will be the way I go, and then I'll see who else falls to me in the last round. So, John, you took Chris Brazell. You take Elijah Surratt. Talk to me about those two guys real quick.
Brazell is based obviously on the system at Tennessee. I mean, he had a really nice year. I don't think most people realize he had 74 targets, 44 receptions. I like to see a little higher catch rate than that.
For sure.
And 711 yards. 16.2 yards per reception. And remember, Tennessee last year didn't throw the ball. They were not very good at the quarterback position. I expect him to be a little bit more aggressive throwing the ball. That's what Josh Heupel has done before. So I expect him to come back and throw the football. I like Brazell. I've read good things about him. He was highly touted coming out. So I think in the 12th round of arguably a top 12 offense, if everything goes right, I'll take that. And Elijah Surratt, we know the JMU coaching staff. What did they take, like 10 players with them to Indiana? And
absurd amount,
right? So you look at the roster, you look at the way the offense should function. I think Surratt's going to be heavily targeted. What did he get last year? 101? I don't know if he'll get 101 in the Indiana, but let's say he gets 80. I'll take 80 targets in round 13.
No, totally understand. I'm a little hesitant with how many wide receivers they brought into Indiana. We can't fully, I don't think it's fair for us to fully assume that he automatically gets one of those starting roles. Because again, he's still going up from the G5 to the P5, regardless if he's following the coaching staff. I think he's a much better value now in the 13th round than when he was going back in like 5th, 6th round back in the early offseason there. I'm totally cool with that pick. I like it a lot there. I took my second tight end. I took two tight ends in this draft, which I don't know if anybody else has, but I took Jake Briningstool because I kept looking at it, and among my tight ends that I projected here, Jake Briningstool actually has the highest number of targets I have projected. Now, granted, his reception percentage is a little bit lower. His yards per reception is lower than a lot of the guys that are ahead of him, so that puts him at tight end 6 in my rankings. But regardless, if Nick Harbor reaches the ceiling I was talking about earlier, and Jake Briningstool just basically repeats what he did last year, I'm looking at the top 2 target getters in my tight end rankings right now, and they're both on my team right now. I don't typically go 2 tight ends this early, but man, I was kind of looking at it like, that wouldn't be something I'd be opposed to at this point in the draft if the opportunity presented itself. So that's kind of my thought process there, taking 2 tight ends back to back.
I love it, and I didn't think I got a chance to mention it. Didn't we see a recent report or a tweet in which he ran some ridiculous 40 time, or he was
10-12, I believe.
Yeah, that was it. And he's a big man, isn't he? Like 225 pounds or something.
He's huge. I mean, no, he's bigger than that. I think he had to lose weight.
Yeah, so I think he might be one of those size speed freaks that we get from the Bruce Feldman list. Like, if you just look at that. So I love that there. And then I would say you took a very nice, safe tight end, right? Bringing Stool's going to be good. I love that. Can I just say, I like what Nicholas Allen did. We never talked about him. He waited on the quarterback, and I think he was the last one to take a starter. And he got 3 real nice ones, right? TJ Finley at Western Kentucky. We got to love the system. Noah Fafita in a 6-point passing touchdown format has more value. And then my personal kind of sleeper, I love Nicholas Vadiato. Am I saying it Vadiato? Vadiato out of Middle Tennessee. I think he got some real nice value considering he waited till round 11. So it's my pick. And I wanted to see how long this quarterback sat on the board. If he goes this late, I'm going to be way over invested in best balls. I just can't. I know the schedule stinks. It's terrible, folks. I get it. There's a lot of change. I get it. But his head coach is still Lincoln Riley. I got to go Miller Moss here. If I'm going to get that upside in round 14, I'm going to take it all the time. And we'll work the lineup later. But look, he has a high ceiling. Is it likely? No. But I'll take that value this late in the draft.
Alrighty, John, we're finished with our 14 rounds here, man. Like, I'm looking at so many players that are still on the board. I loved your Miller Moss pick there at the end. If I was taking a quarterback here, I probably would have taken him. It was between him and the guy I did take, which was Josh Meredith, the wide receiver out of Washington State there, a guy that I just wanted to really talk about. I know my listeners are sick to death of me talking about Washington State, but man, it worked out last year for me, investing early on in that Ben Arbuckle slot receiver when I went and grabbed Lincoln Victor in as many drafts as I could last year. And I'm doing the same thing again this year. I'm going to get Josh Meredith. I would also take a shot on Chris Hudson here and there. They're both going to be playing in the slot. But I personally like Meredith a little bit more. Yeah, we're at the end of the draft here, John. We got 14 rounds. All of our experts have got their picks in. Why don't we real quick go through quarterbacks, running backs, actually go through your team, John.
Sure.
And talk to me about how do you feel about it? What would you do differently? Things like that.
I don't think I'll go 3 straight running backs again. That's my first thought process. I've done it twice now. I'm not upset with the team, but I think there's value. I could get those running backs who I like a little bit later in round 7, 8, 9. So I won't go 3 in a row. So I had Ollie Gordon and Damon Martinez and Jordan James, if you weren't here earlier, if you're listening the whole time. At my backups, I have Caden Fegan, who I love, out of Illinois. I like him very much. And, so I only took one other backup. So there's still running backs. I mean, maybe I would have taken a 5th running back, but this is kind of a mock, and I saw some value. I thought my wide receivers came together considering I drafted late. I'm all right with Trey Harris. I like Jaden Higgins and Kyren Lacy. If one of them become a star, I'm very, very comfortable with that as long as the other 2 are weekly players. To me, the advantage that I have is Oronde Gadsden at tight end. If he goes back to his form and he's healthy that he was 2 years ago, I like that very So KJ Jefferson, Garrett Nussmeier,
John,
and then I took
John, I lost you there for a bit.
Sorry.
Right about where you were talking about like Oronde Gadsden if he returns to form, and then you got cut off.
Okay, so let me go. I'll start with Oronde Gadsden again. How's that?
Okay, that sounds good to me.
At tight end is where I think I have an advantage in this draft because I did take Oronde Gadsden. I believe I was the second owner to take a tight end off the board. If he bounces back to his form 2 years ago, I'm very comfortable with that value. I can start him every week. He's a plug and play automatic. I love that very much. The value that I got at quarterback with KJ Jefferson, I'm very happy with him. I loved him last year. It didn't work out, but this is a very good system, down at UCF with Malzahn. So I'll take him there. Garrett Nussmeier, I'm going to go that Brian Kelly and that LSU team gets the passing game going. And Jared, you know better than I do down south. Whoops. Oh, yeah. Jared, you know better than I do. Does LSU, did they really improve the defense personnel-wise down there? I think we might get some shootouts again. So I like that value. And then we just mentioned, I'll take Miller Moss at my 3rd quarterback off the board.
Yeah, I like your team quite a bit here, John. I think the value you got at quarterback is easily the biggest thing I love. Probably the thing I like the least about your team, if I may critique.
Oh, of course.
I think you have a lot of shots taken at wide receiver, but very few safe picks there.
I don't.
And I think that would probably be if I was looking at this team and looking for something to do differently next time, I might again, like you said, you might not go running back earlier. I would probably keep the same wide receiver set, maybe drop one of the guys at the end and try to grab yourself like a Sean Atkins or a Pefele Ashlock, even Evan Stewart, Xavier Restrepo there at that 2-3 turn. Just to really give yourself a clear top guy and then start taking shots. Meanwhile, on my team, again, not to toot my own horn here too much and everything, but I personally like the way I handled wide receiver a little bit better, where I got Ted McMillan, Evan Stewart, both of those guys should be studs for the most part. And then I look at the four wide receivers I got at the end of the draft, and then the tight end hybrid and Nick Harbor there. Between Owens, Xavier Henderson, Denzel Boston, and Josh Meredith, I'm getting a third starting wide receiver out of those 5 guys, right? I'm getting a guy that I'm going to plug into the lineup weekly out of those 5 guys, and I feel like I got a great value overall there. Running back still here at the end of the draft is probably the thing that I feel the most queasy about. Again, I only got 4 in the first 14 rounds. And while I do like some guys still on the board, we'll get to that here in a minute, it does dry up here pretty soon. And I would definitely be kind of scrambling a little bit to kind of shoot for some more upside guys. Kind of the same way, John, with you, with your wide receiver situation. None of my running backs are like super safe. I got some volume guys. Some guys that maybe provide me a solid floor of like RB30, but I don't think any of them are really going to take off on me and be, RB10 or greater in the season. I only drafted 2 quarterbacks, Dylan Gabriel, Jackson Arnold. Looking at some of the guys here still on the board, I would have been pretty happy with who I could get in probably the next couple of rounds here. And then tight end, already talked about it. Nick Harbor, Jake Burning-Sewell. I probably would actually flip those in a real draft. I just wanted to make sure I got Harbor here to talk about him. But I like what I did with my draft quite a bit here. Again, hitting running back a little bit earlier, probably be the only thing I would do different.
I love your wide receivers. And remember, in this format, we can play 4 wide receivers in the flex. You can put 1 in the flex, right? So theoretically, we only need 2 running backs to hit. And the only thing that I look into, and I know it's so hard to predict and it's fickle, it is the touchdown equity, and I don't think we talk enough, and even in the NFL fantasy, right? That running back touchdown equity, we all want PPR, of course. I mean, who doesn't like a college running back with 55 receptions? But if you get that running back, and we've all been there like, how good, Cody Schrader last year, right?
Oh, yeah.
You loved him, we love him. I mean, his touchdown equity, when you get those 3 rushing touchdowns, it is gold. So the only thing I wonder, maybe TJ Harden is that guy, right? Maybe he gets the 15 touchdowns. But that would be, I love the receivers, love the quarterbacks. I think you did great double tap. But do you have a running back where I could say, hey, that's great touchdown equity. I should get 15 if he's healthy. That's all.
I agree 100%. And again, there's also injury concerns here as well. Again, Jalen White being my number 1 running back here, I can't guarantee that any of those 4 guys really make it through the season healthy, given the fact that we've seen all 4 of those guys injured before. So yeah, I think that's a very fair critique of my team. So John, let's go quarterbacks here. Who are some of the top guys through 14 rounds you're either surprised are still on the board, or like maybe you would be looking at next?
Oh, I think let me make sure Will Howard did not go, correct? He never went in the draft, right?
No, he came off the board.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Oh, you're right. Round 14-3.
Yep.
Carson Beck.
Yeah.
He's not there, right?
Nope, he was not taken.
In a 6-point passing league.
Oh, yeah.
Carson Beck to me has much more valuable. So I think Carson Beck's very interesting. Malachi Nelson, I don't believe he was taken either, correct?
No, sir.
So I like those 2. And then there's a bunch of long shots. Tyler Shook, I wouldn't have expected him to come off. And then we talked a little bit about South Carolina. I have not seen Lenoris Sellers drafted. Have you, or is there even ADP on him? I'm very fascinated in Lenoris Sellers this year.
I got him right here. QB 49, just at the end of the 20th round is his ADP.
I I'm starting to like him a little bit more and more as I go through it. I have him. Let me see where I have Sellers right now. I have him at number 40. So I'm a little ahead of 80 now, but I could even be inclined to move because I think he's a very interesting player.
Yeah, I got him as QB 36, so I'm even a little bit ahead of you. Again, when you have like these monster athletic tight end guy, or not tight end, these monster athletic quarterbacks playing out there, and quite frankly, again, we're talking about South Carolina, who was a bad team last year. They're in need of a quarterback that can just completely take over a game. He's going to be behind a bad offensive line. It's going to force him to run. He's an incredibly athletic guy. Scrambles, again, this is something I've been trying to talk to. I've been talking to Parker Fleming a little bit about, is like, what's the difference in value between a scramble versus a designed run? And if you get quarterbacks that are forced to scramble a lot, but have that athletic ability to actually turn it into something, those are the guys that you love to have, because those scrambles are worth more per run than just a guy that gets 5 to 10 designed runs per game. And so Lenore Sellers absolutely fits that bill there. I love that call out there.
I think he's very interesting, dude.
A couple of guys I'll call out here. Again, it's safe pick, but DJ Uiagalelei there with Mike Norvell at Florida State. Pretty much, like, DJ's been a top 30 quarterback last 2 years. Norvell's produced a top 30 quarterback last 2 years. I think we're in for another top 30 quarterback. Only major concern, obviously, is who the heck is he throwing it to? Again, Washington State, you guys know how much I love Ben Arbuckle, but John Mateer still on the board. I like that. Riley Leonard at Notre Dame's a pretty good pick at this point. Josh Hoover, a guy that we just talked about as a round 20 plus sleeper. I think he should be going right about this range we kind of ended at here. You mentioned Tyler Shuck. Gio Lopez at South Alabama, another dual threat guy. Some fun guys still on the board. Running backs, John. Who are some running backs you're kind of looking at here that you would be looking at in the next couple of rounds?
So did I miss? I don't think Jaquavius Marks, did he get taken out of you?
No, he got taken. He was
okay,
8'5".
So, all right, so I have missed some guys. I apologize. Ricky Hunt out of Ohio, did he go?
13-7.
Okay, so that's good. So I'm just going further down my list now. Kentrell Bullock, I had him in my. I don't think he was taken, was he?
He was not.
So he was in my queue. So I just want to make sure Kentrell Bullock I liked. Did an Alabama? I don't think an Alabama running back went at all today, did he?
Justice Haynes, 10-4.
I don't, which is surprising. Wow.
Justice Haynes.
Okay, so
10-4.
I have him at number 44, and I had in my maybe I missed this. Cameron Cook of TCU.
Cameron Cook was not taken. He is somebody I was going to bring up.
So Cameron Cook is definitely. So I would say right now the big two would be Kentrell Bullock and Cameron Cook.
Yeah, Cameron Cook was one of the three guys I was looking at. Parker Jenkins at Houston is another guy that I'm looking at. Again, we've seen what Willie Fritz has done the last couple of years between Tyjae Spears and obviously Mekhi Hughes this past year. Parker Jenkins is easily the best running back in that backfield right now. I know Stacey Sneed's technically still around, but Parker Jenkins is going to earn that top role by week 3 or 4, no doubt about it. Marion Luke's another running back I like out of the MAC there at Central Michigan. Had a really good finish at the end of last year. And then, as I kind of mentioned, things kind of dry up a little bit here in terms of safe guys. I like Cedric Irvin, like Nathan Carter at Michigan State. Some home run guys I think that are worth kind of shooting for past round 15 here. Ruben Owens, we talked about him again on the Sleeper episode this past week. Also, Zach Evans out of North Texas. Lee Babi at UAB there. And then Kanye Roberts out of Appalachian State. All 4 of those guys are like in quote-unquote committees to start the year. In my opinion, at least, all 4 of them are talented enough to earn a lion's share at some point in the season, and I'm happy to take them now and then kind of hold them on my bench for a week or two to see kind of what happens. So, wide receivers, John, who are some guys that you're kind of surprised still on the board and you'd be looking at?
So I just have 2 immediately. Zachariah Branch, I wanted to see him if he got drafted, and he did not. And I understand the conundrum at USC with 5. They might have a 5 receiver rotation, so I understand. And it's a difficult schedule. I do love him in best ball. I would say I took Miller Moss. It was between Moss and Zachariah Branch for the last pick. So I just decided to go with the quarterback, but I like Branch. I would have drafted Antoine Wells, but I already took Trey Harris, so I didn't want two Mississippi. I was all in on Antoine Wells last year. He got hurt. He definitely hurt me a little bit in some leagues, but it is what it is. You have to put aside any feelings you have when the guy burns you and look at it. The ceiling is very high at Mississippi. So I do like Antoine Wells. And then I was just looking quickly at my board. Let's see. Did Jalen Noel? Oh, no, he went. I remember he did go. Did Jonte Cook of Texas go? I don't think he
did
went.
Not.
So he's someone with Quinn Ewers. I think the ceiling is pretty interesting with Jonte Cook.
I agree. Again, Cook and Branch are kind of in the same category for me, where again they're incredibly talented guys. I'd love to have them in a Devy or a C2C league because I think they'll be future NFL receivers, both of them. But man, they're just kind of stuck in situations for CFF that don't make them super appealing. A couple of wide receivers that I want to point out here. Damon Ward, I'm a huge fan of there at North Texas. Again, those outside wide receivers for Eric Morris are the ones that usually eat. We saw what Jay Macklin was able to do last year. Damon Ward is pretty much the only returning outside wide receiver that they have. Maybe they shift some guys around. Again, I like Landon Sides. Obviously, DT Sheffield returns and reunites with Eric Morris there, so maybe that's going to impact some things. But I like Ward and the value he's going here around 14, 15 plus. The other one here, I know we're like hurt with the Minnesota passing game, but dadgum, Daniel Jackson had 100 plus targets last year. And theoretically, he should be getting some improved quarterback play this year because I really don't think how you can do much worse than Ethan Kaliak-Manis there. And we've seen PJ Fleck provide us just absolutely incredible wide receivers. Think Rashad Bateman, think Tylan Wallace. Like, if they get that passing game going, Daniel Jackson's easily the guy that'll benefit the most there. I would again, if I didn't take so many wide receivers here near the end, he'd probably be next on my list of guys that I'd be taking. Tight ends, John. Any tight end real quick that you want to throw out there as somebody you're surprised didn't come off?
I don't think Caden Prieskorn went.
He did not.
Oh my God, I love him out of Mississippi. He would have been my number one if I went a second tight end. Like, I like your double tap. If it was a 20-man draft or 30-man draft, there's no question I would have taken him. I like him a lot. And I'm trying to look here. Did Luke Haas of Arkansas? I don't think
he did not.
Went. That's another tight end. So I like those. There's two tight ends I still like on the board.
I got a couple of guys here. Bryson Nesbitt at UNC still hanging around. Drake Dabney, the former Baylor tight end, now at TCU to replace Jared Wiley, I like a lot. John Michael Gillenborg, again, got to go after some of those tight ends that are going to be the number one target for their offenses, even if they don't pass that much. It helps when they're the number one guy. Tyler Warren at Penn State's another guy I'm kind of surprised nobody took the shot on. Oscar Delp at Georgia, or Ben Urasek, both of them neither. I'm not a big fan of Urasek. I don't think he's going to take the number one job like some people do, but I'm kind of surprised nobody took the shot on him. Cole Taylor, Mason Taylor, two Taylors. Neither one of them came off the board. So a lot of good tight ends still on the board, and quite frankly, like, again, they may not have the ceiling as some of the other guys that I took here, like Harbor and Brenningstool have, but if you're drafting tight end late, I don't think you're without your options here, especially around this 15-16 round. So, all right, John. Gone about an hour and a half. It's been a good time, man. Appreciate you putting on this draft again with all of us experts. Again, you talk about how like this was like used to be like the one main mock draft you do every year, like with the experts. Now we got like this and my way too early expert mock draft, and it's basically almost like a checkpoint, right? Like you were talking about earlier, like this is the way to gauge value. Like my way too early now is like kind of the first opportunity for everybody to really put it out there.
Oh yeah.
And then now we can look at this with a lot of the same guys drafting in this one as they did in that draft way back in January, February. And it's interesting to see how things have shifted over time.
Oh, yeah.
Guys who went in the 5th, 6th round now, quite frankly, getting close to undrafted. Like, John, you took Elijah Surratt there in the 13th round. I wonder if you didn't take him there, if he would have gone undrafted. Because I've seen him go later than 13th round sometimes. So,
I'm probably higher on him than most. I think he's one of those guys. I've had success in the past with older players. I mentioned it a little bit before the show when we were talking about the Oklahoma Bauman at quarterback, right? Surratt's been, I think he's in his fifth, maybe sixth year. So you got an older player. I know it's up a level of competition, but I'll take my risk with those types of players.
No, absolutely, for sure. All right. I think that's pretty much where we're going to end our show. John, again, if the people are listening to this on Monday, the article version for this draft should be out on Fantrax, if I am correct. So y'all go check that out on Fantrax. Very, very easy to find. John does incredible work. He's an incredible writer. He does a great job of listing out the qualifications of each of the experts that are in this draft, where you can find all their work. Very, very easy for all of you guys, and especially if you are somebody who is just now getting into CFF for this season. Maybe you're waiting until June, July. Don't necessarily blame you, because people have these things called lives, surprisingly enough, and they can't look up college fantasy stuff 24/7 like some of us. This really is an excellent place to start. And John, I really can't thank you enough for putting this on every single year. And I'm honored that you would join CTN to discuss this live.
Well, Jared, I love the fact that you offered to record the show while we were doing it. And I just love being with you. You and I have known each other, I think, for like at least 4 years now, right? For a while. We've done a bunch of shows. So it's a pleasure to be on. I just love it. Go check out Jared's shows every week all summer. If you want to be better at CFF, trust me. Go to Chasing the Natty or Campus to Canton on YouTube. Check out all of Jared's shows, and they're available on podcasts. But thank you. This is great to have this many great people join me, and to have someone like yourself willing to record. And please just go to Fantrax, check out the results, and read the article, everyone.
And a reminder to everybody that you can find all of the experts' Twitter handles down below in the description. So make sure you go and follow each and every one of them if you are not for some reason already doing that. With that, John, again, we have pretty much reached the end of our show. Again, John, really honored always that you're able to come on here. Thank you all who are out there listening. If you have not already, go ahead and leave that like, comment, and subscribe that every YouTuber asks for if you're watching this on YouTube. And if you're on the podcast side of things, make sure you follow the show. Leave a 5-star review wherever you can, especially on Apple Podcasts. If you guys can leave those written 5-star reviews, those help so much more than you can ever imagine when it comes to promoting the show, getting the algorithm for podcast services to show our show to people who might be interested. It helps a ton. So go ahead and take just 2 minutes to do that. It really helps us out. In addition to that, make sure you guys check out the rest of the Campus to Canton podcast network for shows ranging on pretty much anything you can think of related to the college fantasy game. Make sure you check out all of John's stuff on Twitter, his stuff on Fantrax, his stuff with the Rookie Big Board podcast over there. Tons and tons of great stuff. Until then, we'll see you guys back here next Monday, where we'll find ourselves a new topic. We'll be kind of doing some interesting stuff the next couple of weeks. Until then, really appreciate all of you guys, and I hope you have a wonderful and blessed week. See y'all.